Hello there. There's been some interest in lapping film on a couple of the Facebook groups, and I thought that I would go through a small primer. This is the way that I hone. It doesn't have to be the way someone else hones. I'm teaching you my way. If you're new and you want to learn how to hone using lapping film, be my guest. This is a good way to do it. Alright, the first thing you're going to need is a substrate, something flat to set the lapping film on. I use a piece of glass. You could go down to Lowe's and get a nice flat piece of flooring tile. Just you need something flat. Then you need, I set the bevel, and I've already set the bevel on this razor with 1K lapping film, or wet dry. And then you need your lapping film. 3 micron, 1 micron, and 0.3 micron. I used to not recommend 0.3 very often, only if you wanted just a bit more, but now I use it in a regular progression. You need a black magic marker. You need some tape, some good tape. This is Scotch 700. Don't buy cheap tape, you'll be sorry. You need a bottle of water, a pair of scissors to cut the tape with, because you're going to need to replace it between grits, a straight razor, of course, and a loop. 30 power is fine. This is either 30 or 60, but you can get them all the way up to like 100, and there's not a problem with any of them. They're worth getting. And the way that you're going to do this is you're going to set this bevel. You're going to use the black magic marker, and you're going to paint the bevel of this razor. You see residue of the marker on this. And then you will affix your 1K paper here. I might have to reset the bevel on this, but that's alright. You set your 1K paper down. And you'll need one more thing, something to use as a squeegee. I used an old used up debit card for that purpose. But here, let's start over. You see, the bevel is taped, is painted with that marker. And I'm going to lay that on the stone now, or on the hone. Now you could do what's known as a tap and wobble test, where you put the edge and the spine on the stone, and you leave the stabilizer off of it, on the hone rather. Then you would put a finger on one corner, and on the opposite corner you would do that, and you can see that wobbles quite a bit. I know the reason this wobbles, it has a warp in the spine. I could grind the spine back here until it was flat, but in my opinion, it's not needed. You can use rolling X strokes and other techniques that you should learn anyway to take care of that. And that's what I'm going to use here. Now, the reason you marked it with that marker, if I lay this razor down flat on the stone, on the hone, and move it forward, now you see, I don't know if you can or not, you see right there, the razor's not touching the hone there because of that warp. If you look back here, you'll see it's starting to touch here, but not all that great. So now what I could do is I could put it on here and I could apply just a tiny bit of torque and see what that does. Okay, and then we look at it, and that's taking care of this side. But you can see it's not really working down here, so that requires a simple rolling X. So what I do exaggerated is lift the toe off the stone just a little bit so that all the pressure is on the heel. And as I move forward, I'll be dropping the blade and raising up a tad with the toe. Now you don't have to, and now if you look at that, it's hitting it all now. You can see the black is gone. But now I don't have to do that much of an exaggeration with that. I could actually lay this on the stone, and just by shifting pressure as I move forward, start with more pressure on the heel, and as I move forward, graduate the pressure across that edge. That would work just fine. As a beginner, you're not gonna you're gonna have to learn that, and that's where the magic marker comes in, because you can reapply to check your progress to see whether or not it's doing you any good or not. So all right, how do I know whether my bevel's set? Well, the first test that you would do is you would take this loop and you'd look along the edge of that bevel, and you'd look and see whether it's the same shininess all the way to the very edge. If there's any kind of difference between the very edge of that blade and here, say that's duller than the rest of the bevel, you haven't quite met at the apex. Also, you'll look along here and you can see where the stone or the hone is hitting and where it's not, because there will be areas, if the stone is not, if the hone weren't hitting here, if what I was doing wasn't right and it wasn't hitting that part of the blade, when I looked at it through this loop with a good light source, and this is a lighted loop, but the battery's dead, but I don't need it. I've got a good strong light above me, and I honed without a loop for years with just a strong light, so I'm comfortable with it. But if I look at it through this loop, this part would be nice and shiny, and this area would be dull. That would be telling me I'm not hitting here. So I need to remedy that somehow. Now, one of the things you can do is you can hone this razor, and then when you look at it through the loop, if you've got it set everywhere else but like right here, you remember that tap and wobble where I laid the razor here and I put my finger there and put my finger there and the razor wobbled? Well, it'll do the same thing when I'm honing. In other words, when I lay this razor's edge on this hone and this heel is lifted up, I can just set my finger there, no pressure, just lay my finger right there on that edge. I use my thumb one time and my finger the next. It just depends. You're not really putting any pressure. But I can hone that one tiny little area. If I have a problem here, I can do the same thing. If I have the problem in the center, wherever it is that I'm not hitting, I can come back and just lay that finger, and what it'll do is it'll make that razor wobble back down on that portion of the blade that I'm not hitting, just like it wobbles when I do it like that. I don't need to grind away the spine or anything like that. I can just simply put a finger there with no pressure whatsoever, just the weight of my finger. And I can get that spot that's bothering me, that doesn't want to hone. And once I get that done, then I can come back and kind of blend those areas in with a few X strokes, rolling X strokes in this case. Until I get it smoothed back out so that there's an even scratch pattern all along the bevel. And when I move up in the grits, I'll do the same thing. I'll hone the rest of the blade first, get it the way I want it, and then I'll come back and put my thumb where I need to, my finger where I need to, straighten that out, and then go back to X strokes to smooth everything out. All the way through, even through to your finish. So, how do I know if this blade has a set bevel or not? Well, you take that loop and you look at it, and you're looking for all the things that I told you before. An even shine all the way along the bevel that goes all the way to the edge. You don't see any difference between the amount of reflection along the edge of that bevel. But also, does it shave? Does it shave all the way along that edge? This one absolutely does. Okay? There's another test you can use. You take your thumb. What I'm going to do is lick it with my finger. If you're honing for somebody else, you're going to disinfect this anyway, right? So everybody goes, ew, and get over it. I'm going to lick my thumb, and then I'm going to take my blade, and I'm going to lay it like this across my thumb and begin to pull. And what you're looking for is for the razor to feel like it's digging into that. You're not using any pressure. You're not trying to slice anything. You're just running that edge all along that thumbnail. And you're looking for it to grip smoothly and kind of bite in all along that edge, which this one does. Now, if you move it across there and you get to a point and it slips free, smoothly, it's not digging in, there's an issue. You haven't got the bevel set in that spot. If you move it along and it's gritty and bumpy and feels rough, then you've got chips or micro serrations or something going on at the edge you need to address as well. But if it grips, it kind of digs in all along the edge, then that bevel's set. Then you are ready to move on to the next progression of film onto film. Now, once you have your bevel set, what I would do is I do about 20 of them just to try to correct any kind of damage I might have done with my thumbnail. And then once you move away from this to the lapping film to your higher grits, you will never do that thumbnail test again. Now, you might do a thumb pad test, but you will never do a thumbnail test once you leave your bevel setter. It will ruin your edge. You will not get a nice shavable edge. So we're going to move on now to 3 micron lapping film. Alright, we're back. I've removed the 1K wet dry. I put a brand new layer of tape on my straight razor, and I'm going to wet this and take an old debit card, and I'm going to do my best to try to scrape anything off of here, because I don't want anything underneath, not even one tiny little particle of dust underneath the lapping film. Then we're going to move to 3 micron lapping film. Going to squeegee that down. And I don't know if I mentioned, but these things come in like a 6x9 sheet where I get them from. And I cut them down to like a 3" by 6" piece of film. And then what we're going to do now, this would be like an equivalent of probably about an 8K stone. We're going to begin to hone on this. And what we're doing, I'm using a rolling X because that's what I know this razor needs. Pay attention as you move it across the stone. If there's any grit or anything up underneath this film, you'll feel it under the edge of the razor. You're going to want to remove it and clean that off of it. And what I'm doing is I'm going to hone this on this sheet of lapping film for a while, and then I'm going to take my loupe and I'm going to look. What I'm looking for is the a difference in polish along the edge of this razor. That's a theme that's going to be repeated over and over and over again, because that will tell you what's happening here. If I have more of a polish here, then I know that I'm hitting here and not here, that kind of deal. Continue to make passes and watch. Sometimes that will even itself out without you having to do anything. Other times, sometimes it'll be like it'll start at either the heel and the polish will just slowly crawl up the edge until it meets here. Other times, it'll go the opposite way, or it'll start in the middle or whatever. If it starts in the middle, my advice to you would be start with a rolling X stroke, start with some kind of corrective measures so that you don't hone a frown into the center of the blade. Otherwise, sometimes it'll climb up or roll back. You want to watch for that. You want to pay attention. If it's taking too long, then you want to use some kind of corrective stroke, because you don't want to make that frown. You don't want to wear away the heel or the toe to where it's funky or anything like that. You want to try your best to get a nice even bevel. And what you're looking for is for the scratches from this micron lapping film. That'll be the shinier spots, the smoother spots on here, to replace the scratches from your 1K wet dry. You're going to replace those, and I let it sit and dry a little bit so it's going to move. So I'm going to squeegee it back down. But that's what you're doing. And you're going to hone on this piece of lapping film until it's all even and all the scratches from the previous grit are gone. A couple of tips. No pressure. If you apply pressure, what will happen is the edge of this heel will cut. I did that on the last couple of laps on this, and you see what it did. It'll slice it. You don't need pressure with lapping film. Lapping film is fast cutting. It cuts well, polishes really well, and I don't need any kind of pressure whatsoever with this lapping film to get the job done and done well. So we're going to continue to hone on this until I can take this loupe and look at it and see all the scratches gone from the bevel setter and see that it's nice and shiny and smooth all the way along, all the way to the edge. And one other thing, you want to watch your tape, particularly on the bevel setter, but also through these stages. When it begins to eat through on the spine, you want to replace that tape. Otherwise, you'll have scratches all over your bevel here. There'll be a thickness of tape here and no tape here, and you'll just run into issues. Once you see that tape begin to try to go away and try to be worn through, replace it with a new layer of tape, and you want to try to get it as even as you can. Also, replace the tape between each progression of film. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to continue to hone on this till all of these scratches are gone, and then I will be back with 1 micron film. Alright, now we're at 1 micron, and we're simply going to repeat the process. We're going to take this loop, we're going to look at the edge of that bevel, and we're going to burn that scratch pattern and the level of sheen on that bevel into our brain. And now we're going to alter it with this until all of that goes away and the scratch pattern from this takes its place completely along the entire bevel. Alright, we're back. We're done with the 1 micron. All the previous scratches from the 3 micron film are gone. Now we're going to move to 0.3 micron, and that is the white film in this case. The different manufacturers have different colors. The one I use is white. Previously, what I used to do is put a bit of wet paper underneath the 1 micron, and it gave it a bit, or the 0.3 micron, I'm sorry, and it gave it a bit of give and sort of kind of maybe slightly rounded the edge just a tiny bit to kind of smooth out the shape. But what I found that I like now, and I'm gonna reattach this 1 micron, is to actually lay it on top of the 1 micron film. And I'm finding that for me, that's working out really nicely. And what I'll do, this is just finishing. This is a final finisher. I'm not trying to remove every bit of the scratches off the bevel of this razor like I did with all the previous ones. All I'm trying to do is just polish the very apex of this edge up a bit. And in order to do that, what I usually do, This is the only time that I really count and kind of stick to it. But what I usually do is do 2 sets of 30 very lightly. And that's enough. Just really super light and slow. Feels like there's something up underneath there. So what I'm going to do is just because I want to make sure. I'm going to do that right there. All right. You need to keep paying attention to that. If you feel like there's something under that edge, you want to take care of that. And we're just doing very light passes. Where before, from the bevel set all the way through to the 1 micron lapping film, I used a little bit of torque to the edge as well as a roll on the rolling X. Through here, I am not using any torque. I'm not using any pressure. I'm just trying to go as soft and light as I possibly can. All right, that's about 30 passes. And I'm going to look at it through the loop. And I'm paying particular attention to the very apex, the very, very edge of that edge. And that's pretty polished right there. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and do one more set of 30 on this film. And then what I would do is drop the razor and shave test it. That's it. That's as simple as it gets. Lapping film is a fantastic honing solution. You can even get stones for the bevel set and the mid-range and move from like a 4K to the 3 micron, or you could take and go all the way to 8K with synthetic stones and start with a 1 micron, the green, and use it as a finisher. Or you could go a little bit further and polish. This is like 20 or 30,000 here, I would guess. With the 0.3 micron, like we've done here, lapping film is really simple and easy to use. It doesn't cost very much. It's very effective. if you've got stones all the way up to 4K or 8K, you can pinch hit with lapping film the rest of the grits that you need to go all the way to finish and get wonderful edges on your straight razors. Alright, God bless you. I hope that this has been helpful to you, and I will talk to you later.